I'm grateful to have the chance to say goodbye. I am proud of you all, my X-Men.
The X-Men are back. Ever since X-Men 97 came out, it's been met with high praise from just about every Marvel fan on Earth, and with very good reason. Like, I don't think I've seen a Marvel show with so much love and passion put into it in a very long time. And I think the reason for that is because it's made by people who truly love and understand the source material. So for this video, I want to talk about exactly what makes X-Men 97 an astonishing adaptation. Now before I get into all that, I want to first clarify where I am as an X-Men fan. I grew up with the Fox movies and shows like X-Men Evolution and Wolverine and the X-Men in the 2000s. I started properly reading the comics around when AVX was happening, loved all the different comics that were coming out around that period, but kind of stopped reading after the death of Wolverine because I think around that time Marvel were treating the whole property like some unwanted stepchild. But now I'm starting to read the Chris Claremont run from the 70s and 80s. I've only just finished reading Days of Future Past and I'm honestly loving it so far. I can't believe I've been sleeping on these. Now to be perfectly honest, when this series was first announced, I was actually a bit disappointed. This is because I didn't grow up with the original show. I don't really have a lot of nostalgia for it. When this show ended, I was 2. I didn't have time for X-Men back then. Postman Pat was on. Like I said before, I grew up with the later shows. That's the stuff I have nostalgia for. Now granted, I have watched the 90s show in more recent years since it came out on Disney Plus, and I understand why fans like it so much. It is a good show that, I'll admit, was willing to go places that those other shows were too afraid to follow. But it still can't replace those other shows for me. It's a bias. I'm aware of it. So yeah, when this show got announced, I just naturally assumed it was nostalgia bait. Just another thing from the past brought back in a half-baked reboot that does more harm than good to its IP. After 10 whole episodes, I can honestly say, I was wrong. This show is incredible. The writing, the animation, the characters, it's all just amazing. Like, this is how you revive a show. Not by just repeating what came before, but by evolving it. This revival has matured with its audience that watched it 30 years ago. This show goes hard. And yet the original also went pretty hard at times, but they dialed it up to 11 here. It takes what it's adapting seriously, and that's something I really appreciate. While in more recent years we've had superhero movies and shows that seem like they're embarrassed to be superhero properties, and they feel the need to constantly self-deprecate in order to justify their existence, and showrunners and directors told to not even look at the source material that they're adapting because it doesn't matter. So it's really nice to see a writing team that are not only fans of the material, but are absolutely unapologetic about it. This is such a breath of fresh air, just so good. Now some of you might argue that it actually takes more to make a good show or movie than just being a fan of the source material. And yeah, I'd agree with that. There have been a lot of bad movies and shows that were made by fans. Video game adaptations are a great example of this. We're only now in the past 5 years or so getting good ones, even if the occasional dud slips through the cracks. But X-Men 97 I feel balances that fine line between fan passion and talented screenwriting to make it one of the best adaptations of a comic book property that I have ever seen. But what exactly makes this show a good adaptation? Well, if you remember a while back, I posted a video on whether comic book accuracy matters in superhero adaptations. In that video, I came to the conclusion that while the context can be changed for a superhero adaptation, whether that be for necessity or creative choice, that it's essential for any adaptation to stay true to the characters themselves. And this is something X-Men 97 excels at. And the prime example of this is Cyclops.
Yet again, humanity is in the X-Men's debt.
Trask would rather humans and mutants go to war than work together. We all win when men like him fail.
I'll admit, I have never really been much of a Cyclops fan. He always just came off as an annoying teacher's pet with eye-beams, like the worst type of paladin. I mean, if the movies don't give a shit about him, why should I? As much as I like Wolverine and the X-Men, I just couldn't care less when the story centered around Cyclops. But my god, does this show put respect on the leader of the X-Men. Scott Summers is treated with so much love. He gets some of the best action sequences in the show with some very creative use of his eye-beams. He's still a Boy Scout, but now that demeanor is challenged by his wants and needs. His belief in Xavier's dream begins to clash with his desire to be a good husband and father, and now his loyal soldier demeanor is slowly chipped away by all the crap that happens to him as a consequence of following in his mentor's footsteps. Not to mention, this is the first time that I felt that his romance with Jean was real. In a lot of adaptations, this romance doesn't feel right. In the Fox movies, it's treated as an obstacle between Jean and Wolverine. In All New X-Men, the two seem to not even want to be together, but here the relationship is treated like a proper romance. Troubles and all. These two go through a lot of issues that test their love for one another, but they manage to pull through it regardless. So yeah, just such a good job adapting these characters that may have been considered boring for years, without the need to just completely change up who they are. Something else that I mentioned in my previous video was about how superhero adaptations usually take inspiration from multiple stories in the comics to create their own unique story. And this is something X-Men 97 does quite well, taking inspiration from the Chris Claremont run, the Grant Morrison run, and the Scott Lobdell run. This show cherry picks from multiple eras of X-Men to create its own narrative, and personally I think this is one of the best ways to adapt a comic book. It keeps everything fresh, allowing for creativity from the writers while still being faithful to its source material. And I think what the writers were able to do using this method was create a narrative that has a lot of social commentary on today's society.
Superheroes and social commentary, I have opinions on that!
Now I know a lot of people don't particularly like it when superheroes get political, even though superheroes themselves are political in nature and always have been. You just can't really have an X-Men story that doesn't have a commentary on society. Even the worst X-Men stories have political messages in them. Changing the mastermind behind the destruction of Genosha from Cassandra Nova to Bastion is actually genius when you think about it. It's quite fitting that the writing team decided to use a tech-based villain as the one to utilize people's fear and xenophobia, something that is particularly prevalent today with social media having such a negative effect on mental health and giving a platform to those who would promote hate speech. Bastion radicalizes those who feel threatened by the rise of mutants, turning them into monsters.
They've been told over and over that the future is leaving them behind, but I invite them to be relevant again.
Something that resembles the rise of influencers manipulating the disenfranchised into thinking the reason that they feel so lost and out of place in society is because of other groups around them, and that they can only be better so long as they subscribe to their way of thinking. And Bastion's influence doesn't stop there. His hatred spreads to even the X-Men, particularly Rogue, a victim of Bastion's attack on Genosha, a safe haven for mutants, having to witness the death of the man she loved, finally being able to touch him, but not being able to feel him. Rogue and the rest of the team are pushed to their moral limits, doing things that they never thought they could do, such as trying to kill Trask.
I don't believe in the glorification of murder. I do believe in the empowerment of women.
Rogue's hatred even pushed her to abandon the X-Men and join Magneto, completely driven by her emotions. And we, the audience, completely understand where she and Magneto are coming from. Honestly, when I was watching this show, I felt a little uneasy, because as the story goes on and a lot of horrible shit happens to these characters, it slowly takes a toll on them, setting them on a dark path that genuinely had me worried. It felt that with every episode, with both sides becoming more and more radical, the show was telling us that Xavier's crusade for a cooperative world between humans and mutants was a foolish dream that should be abandoned. That it really is only us or them.
Perhaps the professor's vision for the future was too nearsighted, and begging for your tolerance was our first mistake.
The further into the show we go, the more idealistic Charles Xavier's beliefs seem, and the more justified Magneto's become. That was until the final episode, when the X-Men look upon their half-beaten enemy, the one who caused them so much pain, and instead of finishing the job, they offer him a hand. They try to be better than their anger, and willingly help the avatar of human hatred. And it was right here that I understood the message that Bo DeMeo and the writing team were trying to tell. Everyone's anger has done nothing but divide them. It pushes them so far that they turn on their own neighbors, their own friends. Everyone's pushed to the point that they'd rather let the world burn than offer a hand. The title of the finale may be Tolerance is Extinction, but really the opposite is proven true. Intolerance is extinction. And it's Cyclops' willingness to offer that olive branch that brings all of the X-Men together and reminds them what kind of world that they're really fighting for. Everyone works together to protect a world that hates and fears them, but still one that they must learn to share with humanity. X-Men 97 is a return for a lot of things. A return to form in animation, writing, and beloved characters finally being given the respect that they've been denied for years. This is one of the best comic book adaptations I've ever watched, and I honestly cannot wait for Season 2 and what lies in store for not just the X-Men, but for Marvel in general. But if I can nitpick just a little, this is one of the worst Scottish accents I have ever heard.
Careful, Miss Frost. Don't go filling this man's head with such notions.
Guys, just hire Scottish actors. They're around. They'd appreciate the work. Hey everyone, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, then please leave a like, drop a comment on what you're looking forward to in terms of X-Men, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Have a good day.